Grandpa, why don't you tell us a story? You've led an interesting life.
That's a lie, and you know it. But I have seen a lot of movies.
Welcome to Mo's Movie Show. I'm Mo. The visual portion of this project, the podcast is very different. That's what that is, and this is what this is. I had some requests to do to provide visuals for the podcast, and I simply won't do it. I need you to know that now. I'm not going to do that. With me, if I put anything in the way between me and the goal, it's not getting done. And I know that. It's so important to know yourself. So this is also Mo's Movie Show, but just different. So if you don't know, I have a podcast, Mo's Movie Show, and recently just did an episode about my experience at TIFF, which was phenomenal. And this right here will be where I put my video essays. I read a lot of essays for school, and I really am an avid watcher of video essays. So I was like, why not do it? So I am. I'm not confident in my writing, but I do like my ideas, and it's so hard to switch. I'm a silly, goofy gal, and to make essays into video essays, I have a hard time. Like, I was reading this, and I was like, how am I gonna share this with my people? This is not how I speak normally. I try to really write in a very casual way. Actually, when people, TAs, teachers, make comments on my essays and they say at times reads too formal, I'm like, great, good. I've that's my personal goal. Is I understand the place for academia and for writing in that way. I want someone who has never gone to a university class to understand what I'm saying. So I guess what I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to try my best, essentially try to explain to you what I'm trying to explain to you. Let's try this again. Welcome to Mo's Movie Show. I'm Mo, and here is the visual portion of this project that I'm working on. Here is where I will do my video essays, which is where I try to, or attempt to, translate my written essays that I enjoyed into a visual format. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be strange, but let's do this. Let's see what we can do. So this essay that I wrote, we had to compare to Kubrick. It was for my Kubrick class. I took a whole class on Kubrick, and it was great. Love that guy. We had to compare and contrast two Stanley Kubrick films, and so I chose 2001: A Space Odyssey and Clockwork Orange. So 2001: A Space Odyssey 1968 and Clockwork Orange 1971. Oh, Windows Defender. I'll get right on that.
That was a lie.
I really enjoyed writing this because I think this was the year that I watched 2001: A Space Odyssey for the first time. I do this thing where if I know I'm going to like a movie, I set it aside and I go, when I need a good movie to watch, you'll be there for me.
I'll be there for you. I'll be there for you. 'Cause you're there for me too.
So 2001: A Space Odyssey was that. I had already watched Clockwork Orange because I was a big fan of Clockwork Orange. I actually have a Clockwork Orange tattoo on my foot. I like these movies. So I decided to compare them. Oh, I'm also a huge Nietzsche. Nietzsche. It was the secret third option.
Nietzsche.
Like Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche sounds wrong. Whatever. That's what the internet lady said. Nietzsche. I'm going to switch around. I'll say Nietzsche, I'll say Nietzsche, I'll say Nietzsche. What was the third one?
Nietzsche.
I'm a big fan of many philosophers. Obviously, there's problems in all of them, but that's sort of what I get into in this work. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to read my little thesis statement, and we're going to go from there. So Kubrick uses representations of technology in both 2001: A Space Odyssey and Clockwork Orange to demonstrate how human creations can both liberate and confine humanity. Both films connect to the work of Friedrich
Nietzsche
by depicting the liberating qualities of man's will to power, how it's a natural instinct, and how the confining Jesus God. How does a natural instinct and how the confining human creations of scientific rationality and religious moralism can stifle human creativity and growth? Kubrick uses art in both films to further point to the fact that though religion and rationalism attempt to do so, human creations cannot separate into categories such as good and bad. So human creations cannot be separated into categories such as good and bad. Wait, here's the thing. I'll write a paper and I'll maybe get one edit in, max. You can't make me do more, and I won't. And oftentimes people don't give a flying shit. Flying shit. Yep. I remember being younger and I liked writing little stories, and I remember being like, oh no, I can't be a writer because I'm so bad at grammar and I'm so bad at spelling and I'm so bad at that. And my mom looked me in my little face and she said, Bunny, which is my nickname, that's why they have editors. And I was like, exactly. You're so right. I have to read so many papers, and like then I have to like share my work
the burglar,
with someone,
and then had to
like,
go
I
have
have
eye
to cram my
surgery,
hand over,
and then
it's
my
like-
son had to go over to help, and then my son, he rolled his car 5 times on the way home. Yeah, I'm under a lot of stress.
Wait, what?
So I'm gonna have a lot of mistakes in here as well. Okay. Kubrick is showing in both of these films, somewhat in both these films, that man has a will to power. We'll get into that. That's the Nietzsche situation. That's Friedrich's thing that he's trying to say, and I'll explain why. Don't worry, you're getting ahead of yourself. Let's start with 2001: A Space Odyssey. In 2001: A Space Odyssey, Kubrick opens the film with "Thus spoke Zarathustra."
Zarathustra.
By using this, he connects to the work of Nietzsche, and Nietzsche's novel titled "Thus Spoke Zarathustra." It is a response to the statement "God is dead" that he made in his previous work titled "The Gay Science." Nietzsche, Friedrich, is really famous for this statement, "God is dead," which is like pretty fucking iconic. Really what he meant was God is dead and we killed him, and we killed him through our rationalization. So back in the day, a lot of philosophers talk about this. You'll see like another one that I really love, Michel Foucault, will talk about how we used to think that being gay was caused by demons and, you know, the devil. And then we just sort of plopped in science, and science said, it's not the devil, you're sick. Which we also know is not true, but it was just sort of a way to rationalize the world. We used to rationalize it with sort of religion and spirituality, and now we're rationalizing it in this way. But both have this sort of controlling, categorizing tendency. So when when Friedrich said God is dead, like once you introduce these things, you can no longer kind of go back. You step through this doorway of rationalism and the Enlightenment, and you can't bring God with you because God is that old way of rationalizing the world. You've gone through the doorway and there's no going back. You can't, what is that story of the guy who turns around and, he's like, you can take her out of hell, but as soon as you turn around, it's over, man. And he's like, I got you. And he gets all the way to the end. He's like, so anyways, no! That story. A major theme behind the God is dead statement is the idea that rationality is a tool and not an end in itself. Thus spoke Zarathustra, which he wrote in response. So he says, God is dead. And everyone's like, holy shit. And he's like, you're not listening. Let me write a whole book about it, which I so respect. Nietzsche discusses 3 major points. So the points are the will to power, eternal reoccurrence, and the Übermensch. Okay, so far we have Friedrich saying God is dead, making that statement. And that statement is the idea that rationality is a tool and not an end of itself. Like we think, okay, God is dead, we killed him, and now we have science, and science is best, this rational way of thinking, this philosophical, we have the answers, we've done it. But it's a tool and not an end of itself. Let's start with the first one. The will to power is the driving force of humanity. Simply put, it is the force that leads every human to want to grow and dominate. Every one of us has this want to grow and dominate. Like, we want to get better and we want to have a certain amount of power and control. And that is just a normal human thing. It is our will to power. It's a normal feeling. The eternal reoccurrence is the idea that everything is perpetually repeated throughout time. History, there's like this really funny comic that I saw once that was like painful but also really good. And it was some guy trying to explain to a snake why humans are better. And then the snake essentially just like claps back with, "You're the only creature on earth that keeps track of your history, and yet you never learn from it." And that, oof, if that ain't the truth. Looking at the state of the world now, it's so frustrating, and I'm sure you feel this, to see how blatant and how obvious this eternal reoccurrence is. That will to power, that want for power and control, that leads to this eternal reoccurrence of these things happening over and over again. And it's so frustrating and painful to watch. Number 3, the Übermensch is an individual who, rather than obeying religious or political morals, chooses to think for themselves and become creative. We've killed God.
He's dead.
We can't go back. That's just how it is. Everybody wants control and power. And we're going to have an eternal reoccurrence. We're going to have these things repeat unless we go above this, unless we are aware of these things, go above it, and choose to filter our will to power into creative outlets. Try to master the arts, whatever that may be, is a more productive and wonderful use of your natural human instinct of a will to power, instead of, killing people and taking their land, which is not okay. Friedrich would discuss a lot of situations of like, there's no good or bad, there's just what we decide is good or bad, which can seem like a very morally gray area, which is why Nietzsche's work, we'll get into it, has been used for such terrible things that I don't think he would agree with, but I'm no historian and I'm just talking out my ass. I'm not a fucking huge scholar when it comes to this. I only have a philosophy minor. I don't even have it yet. I'm like a semester away from having it, so grain of salt, grain of salt, grain of salt. Übermensch would be someone who, instead of obeying these religious figures that say this is good, this is bad, and listening to them, or political morals where someone says this is good, this is bad, it's getting outside of those systems of power that say this is this, and deciding for yourself what is right. Water break. So in 2001: A Space Odyssey, the first appearance of the monolith, which is this big foreboding shape, is during the dawn of man. After witnessing the monolith, Moonwatcher, which is the name of our little main character,
New boy in the neighborhood lives downstairs and it's understood.
Early ancestor of man, discovers tools, and in doing so is able to evolve and dominate. The very famous match cut from the bone in the air to the spacecraft, this is probably the most, other than the Thus Spoke Zarathustra song, is probably one of the most recognizable parts of this movie, is a direct connection to man's will to power, leading to humanity's evolution throughout time. We see Moonwatcher, that main character there, learn how to use tools after meeting with the monolith, using the tools, and he uses these tools as to help his people survive, and also to attack and kill the other group of Neanderthals, I guess we would call them, or if Moonwatcher's the they're the early humans, then I guess they were fighting the Neanderthals, because I guess that's where they differed, if that's, science. This is not a science podcast. This is not a podcast. This is a video. So he uses it both as a tool, and then he also uses it as a weapon. So it's sort of like, we're going to want these will to powers. You're going to end up, these can be good things, these can be weapons. It's up to you to decide. And it's a messy situation. So they went over that little puddle, which leads to them. But it's not like it was terrible what happened the first time they interact at that puddle without the weapons. They just sort of yell at each other, and whoever was the loudest yeller got to stay. The ones that weren't the loudest yellers fucked off. But now that they have these tools, they're able to control life and death. Is that they're able to murder, which is scary. And that's sort of what is referenced when he does the match cut from the tool to the spacecraft. The spacecraft is something that's like, wow, this really helped us evolve and reach the stars, but also what were the other ways in which we use these sort of tools that weren't just the positives of helping, bring humanity forward. There was a scientist who wanted to help people who were starving by removing the nitrogen. Oh God, what if that's wrong? What if it's wrong? Removing the chemical, I think it's nitrogen, from the air. Because that's really good for growing food, and so you put it into the ground and then you can grow food. But this technique that he discovered was then used to kill people. It was used, I'm pretty sure, for like mustard gas and maybe even for the gas used in the gas chambers in concentration camps. And I'm pretty sure the scientist himself was of the Jewish religion, the Jewish faith. You can have this want to propel humanity forward, but you can't really control everything that will come with that creation. Eternal reoccurrence is the second encounter with the monolith, where you see the people on, I think they're on moon something. They're on a planet, and they find the monolith, and the monolith's like, hey, and they're like, holy shit, in the same way that these Neanderthals or early human ancestors were like, holy shit. They're always going to be amazed, but the eternal reoccurrence is going to happen again and again. Same with Hal, they're sort of like, holy shit, this thing is crazy, and they just like love it and think it's amazing.
The latest result in machine intelligence, the HAL 9000 computer, which can reproduce, though some experts still prefer to use the word mimic, most of the activities of the human brain, and with incalculably greater speed and reliability.
Even though maybe they should be a little bit more distrustful of it.
The 9000 series is the most reliable computer ever made. No 9000 computer has ever made a mistake or distorted information. We are all, by any practical definition of the words, foolproof.
Hal, in the film, is depicted as a god, a human creation that is said to be all-knowing
and incapable of error.
This is similar to pre-Enlightenment, when humanity followed the word of God, a human creation that was all-knowing. The Enlightenment brought forth philosophical rationalism, and as Nietzsche wrote, brought with it the death of God, replacing a single God with a single rational truth. The primitive bone tool brought death and destruction, while also allowing humanity to reach the stars. Similarly, the HAL 9000 computer is a tool and will do the same. You see these titles changing in size and even font. I can't be fucked anymore, so I'll work on it later, I promise. You don't pay for this. HAL is this, all-knowing AI, essentially. And we're like, great, we made it, it's perfect, no questions. How could it be wrong? We made it, it's all-knowing, all-powerful, and all good. Yes, it is. Spoiler alert, is not. Hal is placed in control of the entire ship, with his all-seeing eye watching over everything. 3 crew members are asleep. This logically was decided by their superiors.
This is the first time that men have been put into hibernation before departure. Why was this done?
Well, this was done in order to achieve the maximum conservation of our life support capabilities, basically food and air.
The 3 crew members fully trust their superiors and in Hal's ability to care for them in this state. This eventually leads to their deaths, when both Frank and David disobey the orders of their superiors and the word of Hal, instead trusting themselves. So, on the ship, we have those 3 crew members that are just in like cryogenic states almost, like they're fully just chilling, and Hal, the computer, is in charge of monitoring their hearts, their blood pressure, all their bodily functions, which everyone was like, great, wonderful, awesome idea, yes sir, to my superior in political ways, hierarchy, and yes sir to Hal, the all-knowing, all-good, and all-powerful computer.
Well, it's exactly like being asleep. You have absolutely no sense of time. The only difference is that you don't dream.
Good night, and then went into the beds, never to wake up because they die. After the death of Frank, when David is seemingly fated to die as well.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
What's the problem?
I think you know what the problem is just as well as I do.
What are you talking about, Hal?
This mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it.
I don't know what you're talking about, Hal.
He relies on himself, using technology as a tool to regain entry to the ship. It is only in killing Hal...
Stop, Dave. Will you stop, Dave?
Stop! That he's able to reach Jupiter and the beyond, which we see at the end of the film. David defies his superiors and Hal brackets, God, and using technology as a tool, he's able to evolve and reach beyond becoming the Star Child. We've said goodbye to God. We said goodbye, God, and then we got this new one, and we're treating it like God. But it's not, because it's just a tool, similar to how God was used as a tool to control people. Technology can be used as a tool. So if you're not the person who's using it as a tool, you will be an example of the eternal reoccurrence, and this tool will be used on you. Because people, they be will to powering. Did I say he became the Star Child? David becomes the Star Child. And we'll get into what that little baby means. You keep that little baby in the back of your mind. You remember him. But we're leaving that behind right now. Is everybody any questions? Essentially, David is the Übermensch. He's doing what Nietzsche, Friedrich would want him to do, which is not wholly trusting. He doesn't ever wholly trust Hal.
Do you believe that Hal has genuine emotions?
Well, he acts like he has genuine emotions. Of course, he's programmed that way.
Well, as far as I know, no 9,000 computers have been disconnected.
Well, no 9,000 computers ever fouled up before.
That's not what I mean. Well, I'm not so sure what he'd think about it.
And there's some fun things. Let me see if I can put in some fun facts about 2001 here. Stanley Kubrick. Have I even said his first name? Stanley Kubrick, who hated America. He really loved chess. And there's this part where Hal is playing chess, I think, against Frank. He essentially says, like, I have you beat.
I'm sorry, Frank. I think you missed it. Queen to bishop 3. Bishop takes queen. Knight takes bishop. Mate.
Yeah, looks like you're right. I resigned.
Thank you for a very enjoyable game.
Yeah.
But that's not true. There's, like, I think a few moves that Frank could have done. In that moment, he's showing a level of consciousness in that he can lie, and he can lie in order to get what he wants, which we see later him doing as well. So in lying that there isn't anything that Frank can do to beat him, he's essentially being like, I don't want to play this game anymore. It's got to be so boring for an all fucking genius computer to play chess with Frank. Frank, who doesn't even give a shit when his parents call and wish him happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you.
Flatter, please.
That's a little way that you can see sort of early on that Hal is destined to fuck them over, so to speak. When Hal is dying and he's singing Daisy.
Daisy, give me your answer due. I'm half crazy, all for the love of you.
Terrifying. Sad. That's actually the song that someone, name? The IBM computer, they taught it to sing that song.
My instructor was Mr. Langley, and he taught me to sing a song.
Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer. I'm half crazy.
So that's a little tidbit, and also Hal is just sort of HAL, IBM. I forgot to add a fun fact here, where the voice of Hal was actually done by the Canadian stage actor Douglas Rain, and when asked why he chose this, Kubrick said that it was because he enjoyed the gentle, sort of neutral tone that the Canadian accent has, which I really enjoy, because I feel like, this is me just speculating, but I feel like that is Kubrick commenting on how Canada is often seen as a very neutral country when it comes to a lot of conflicts, but we are in fact not neutral. So I think that really reflects on Hal as a character as well. So movies are fun. Hey, woo. We'll get back to the rest of that, but we're going to stay on theme of this sort of Übermensch, eternal reoccurrence, will to power theme, but jumping into A Clockwork Orange. So in A Clockwork Orange, Kubrick further demonstrates the dangers and similarities in religious moralism and rationalism by following the journey of Alex. The eternal reoccurrence, being the rationalism is not new, is not a new cure, rather a replacement to religious moralism. Thinking that like, oh, we did it, we found like a way to be a better, more evolved version of ourselves, but really this new rationalism is in control is controlled by a certain group of people, and those group of people get to decide what is right and what is wrong for everyone else, which is exactly the same as religious moralism. So the priest standing up front going yes to this, no bad this, is the same thing as a politician saying yes to this, no bad this. And you say, but Morgan, like that's how am I to know not to kill someone unless someone tells me not to? You know not to kill someone. If you think the only thing stopping people from murdering people is because it's against law, is crazy. Like, it means you have, I feel like, very little faith in humanity, because what's stopping me from killing people is I don't think it's right to kill people. And then also remember that these same people who say, no, not right, bad to kill people, are killing people all the time. You can see the connection. I'm certain you're so smart you can do this. We're doing it. So, it's just a replacement. When Alex is arrested...
I know the law, you bastards.
We'll have to show our little friend Alex here that we know the law too. But that knowing the law isn't everything.
At the beginning of the film. He's beaten by the officers, with one of them stating,
Violence makes violence. He resisted his lawful arresters.
Kubrick shoots Alex from a high angle pointing down at Alex and shoots up at the officers, demonstrating the power they hold over him. The officers clearly enjoy the pain they are inflicting on Alex because they feel it is justified. The natural instinct to dominate when accompanied by logic makes this violence okay.
So don't mind us. We'll hold him down.
Later, when being released from the prison, the warden states,
An eye for an eye, I say. If someone hits you, you hit back, do you not? Why then should not the state, very severely hit by you brutal hooligans, not hit back also? The new view is to say no. The new view is that we turn the bad into good. All of which seems to me to be grossly unjust, eh?
Shut when referring to the Ludovico technique. Eye for an eye being a biblical saying, I think right? I'm not going to give you the passages. This points to the fact that they believe to have created a solution to turning bad behavior into good behavior. This, of course, is dependent on who is deciding what is bad and what is good, as is seen in the scene with the officers beating Alex. So, Alex goes out there and beats someone up, and they arrest him, and they beat him up. And they're like, they're smiling, they love it, they're having a great time, but they're like, I can do this because my, rational moralism says that it's okay. Similar to people who are religious thinking that they can, yell at a woman for deciding to do normal medical stuff with their body, and they go, this is okay because I have my religious doctrine to tell me so. Jesus loved me, this I know, because my religious doctrine tells me so. In prison, Alex and the prisoners are in church, with the priest warning that if they do not repent, they will go to hell, becoming angry when they are not frightened and instead laugh. In this scene, they sing a hymn that contains the lines, emphasizing the fact that religion, like the Ludovico technique, which we'll get to, I've been saying that, but I'm sure you don't know what I'm talking about yet. You definitely do know what I'm talking about, because you think about the one thing you think of when you think about Clockwork Orange. That's the Ludovico technique. Is used as a form of control. The priest's anger here mirrors the anger that the police feel when Alex resists his lawful arresters, both wanting to dominate, each using their own tools to do so. In the scene where the Minister of the Interior is demonstrating the new cured Alex, both the minister and the priest connect religious moralism and scientific rationality as tools to repress natural human emotions and control. The priest states that The priest states,
The boy has no real choice, has he? Self-interest. The fear of physical pain drove him to that grotesque act of self-abasement.
The irony being that this is similar to people being good to avoid the physical pain of hell. The minister responds by saying,
He will be your true Christian, ready to turn the other cheek, ready to be crucified rather than crucify, sick to the very heart at the thought even of killing a fly. Reclamation, joy before the angels of God. The point is that it works.
Both religious moralism and rationality are used as tools to control, with Alex stating,
Like a detective that had been watching around the corner and now followed to make his arrest.
In Nietzsche's work, he discusses the rationality generally leads to leaders employing their own values and rules and subjecting others to those rules. In this case, politicians using science as a tool to replace God. Whew. Hello, are we still there? I've been recording for 43 minutes. I think I'm going pretty fast, but I think we're doing really well, and I think you're doing really well. You look really good, by the way. Are we getting into art now? I think I'm getting into art now. Let's see what this little passage says. Both films use art to express the control politicians and religion attempt to place on human creation, and how this is hypocritical. Human creation is directly tied to human emotion. Desire and passion lead to creation, and in condemning human desire and passion through religious moralism or rationality, stifles human creation and denies the natural instinct of what it is to be human. In 2001: A Space Odyssey, we're back to that. When David is placed in the apartment at the end of the film,
You look different.
It is styled in a Rococo art style, with Rococo paintings hung on the wall. The Rococo art style is similar to the style of Baroque art. Baroque art was largely used by the church as a form of propaganda, as it often depicted religious stories. These dramatic paintings would elicit an emotional response, while emphasizing faith in church and power in state. After the Enlightenment, Rococo art emerged. This moved away from the religious depictions and instead favored themes such as sex, beauty, and mythology. You might not be into Catholicism, but you gotta give a hand to Catholic art and stained glass and shit, because the church got money, and the church would invest in the arts because often many people could not read. So in order to get people into religion, the church would make beautiful, beautiful picture books, often using like gold flakes because they would look really nice with the candlelight, so that people would have this emotional response to this painting and then be like, oh, I love God. And these elite people probably also went to church, but it just shows that like the church is like, this is what you're going to make, artist. And then the elite people are like, this is what you're going to make. And then the artist is like, whatever you say, baby, I'm on the clock.
You should go for him. You look hot tonight. Don't take less than 100. Call me when you're through. Take care of you.
In both cases, the creation of art was subject to the desires of those that commissioned it. So not up to the person who was actually the creator of the art. The version of Thus Spoke Zarathustra that Kubrick chooses to use in the opening and the closing of the film is that by Herbert von Karajan, who is a favorite among Nazi elites and who made a name for himself as a conductor of politically acceptable contemporary music, particularly the works of Karl Orff and Richard Strauss. Richard Strauss, who wrote the piece, was fired from this place at the Aachen Opera after his defense of gibberish. After his defense of Jewish libertists. During this time, the Nazi Party was attempting to ban music they deemed it degenerate. This was any music made by Jewish composers or music that was too sexually suggestive. Similarly, Nietzsche's work was subject to interpretation and used by the Nazis to logically support their actions. In using this piece of Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Kubrick shows that the creation of art was subject to those in power. Karajan, though a member of the Nazi Party, was able to have success after their fall due to the fact that his political convictions were vague enough to allow the post-war musical world to look the other way. Herbert von Karajan, is a shit. Did I make myself clear? Sometimes I don't know if I need to elaborate. Was that clear to you guys? Maybe. Who's to say? Moving on. Throughout A Clockwork Orange, Kubrick utilizes art to demonstrate the hypocrisy in religious and political moralism. In Alex's room, while listening to Beethoven, his feeling of ecstasy is demonstrated in a cut to an erotic art painting on his wall. The same style of art can be seen adorning the walls of the health farm, as well as a bust of Beethoven. When Alex is reading the Bible,
I didn't so much like the latter part of the book, which is more like all preachy talking than fighting in the old in-out. I like the parts where these old Yehudis tolchok each other and then drink their Hebrew vino, and getting onto the bed with their wives' handmaidens. That kept me going.
he enjoys the violent parts but ignores the preaching. When Alex is subject to the Ludovico technique, he's shown a film that is a mirror of him and his droogs performing violent acts alongside clips of the Third Reich. Afterward, when explaining how it made him feel horrible, the scientist responds,
"Of course it was horrible. Violence is a very horrible thing. You felt ill this afternoon because you're getting better. You see, When we're healthy, we respond to the presence of the hateful with fear and nausea. You're becoming healthy, that's all.
The hypocrisy here is that, much like the violent components of the Bible, violence is a part of what it is to be human. In categorizing and condemning parts of human emotion as bad and attempting to remove them from Alex, they also remove the parts of him that feel joy listening to Beethoven.
The pain and sickness all over me like an animal. Then I realized what it was. The music coming up from the floor was our old friend Ludwig van and the dreaded Ninth Symphony.
The two cannot be separated. The Nazis are seen as bad, however, violence was necessary to defeat the Nazis. Essentially, the duality of man, baby. You can't be out here saying your violence is not good violence, just like this violence is not good violence, and then entirely ignore violence that was important to face that violence. This thing where people go like, no, that's bad. And it's like, okay, but you putting claws in this man's eyes and subjecting him to these things is then okay because you've decided he's bad. And it's this thing of who's deciding where these lines are, who's deciding what is good and is bad, because that is, there's no such thing as what's good and what's bad. The morals are not real.
I think she's got it. By George, she's got it.
They're individual. And to place morals universally is a dangerous game. The most dangerous game. By utilizing art throughout these films, Kubrick demonstrates that creations of art are natural demonstrations of man's will to power. Will to power is the driving force of humanity. It is occasionally violent. However, condemning creations and parts of human emotions as bad, as often politics and religion tend to do, stifle humanity's growth. You think you did something there, you didn't. Switching, saying, okay, we now know that being gay is not the devil, it's actually you're sick. That's not what it is.
Actually, no, that's not the truth.
You're actually wrong. You're stifling me. I feel stifled. In Clockwork Orange, Alex learns to use rationality and religious moralism as a tool, just as he watched it used by politicians and the priest, and in saying,
I was cured, all right.
While showing him having sex in what seems like a wedding with people clapping around him, it shows he's learned he can act in a way he wants as long as he frames it within the confines of what society deems acceptable. Just as his droogs, Dim and Georgie, we didn't talk a lot about them, are able to be violent so long as they are officers of the law.
No magic, little Alex. A job for two who are now of job age. The police.
Just as Karajan had done. So all of these people are like, okay, I see what's going on here. I can't do this because of my positionality. I can't be bad. I can't. We're going to give an Oscar to Roman Polanski, but when we see Will Smith slap someone on stage, it's the end of the goddamn world.
You don't have to be perfect or exceptionally great. You don't even have to be good. But I do!
They realized that as long as they are working with the systems, they can still do what they want to do, because ultimately going, that's bad, does not mean that's bad for everyone. It means that's bad because I'm the one that gets to decide, and I've decided it's bad for you. Alex going, okay, I'll do whatever the fuck I want, but I'll just put it into where you want me to be. And the droogs go, all right, we want to be violent, let's just become cops. And Karajan said, okay, like, what did Karajan do again? He was a Nazi. He was just like, well, sure, I'm with the Nazis, but he didn't say he was with the Nazis enough that people could get mad at him when they all changed their moral thinking later, which they were all like, Nazis are great. And then he was like, they are there. And then when Strauss said, no, like, what they're doing is terrible, they said, get fucked. But then when everybody changed and was like, actually, no, we've entirely changed our mind, they're terrible, Nazis suck, Strauss was like, that's literally what I was saying, but they were like, too late, you're fired. And then Karajan was like, I never really, like, really gave it my whole like I wasn't fully in, and they're like, no, yeah, I can remember where you stood really. And he's like, yeah, I was very medium. In 2001: A Space Odyssey, David learns to rely on himself. He uses science as a tool to dominate, and in killing Hal, he is reborn into the Star Child. Do you remember the Star Child? The end of 2001: A Space Odyssey can be seen as either a hopeful suggestion that man will evolve, or as the eternal reoccurrence suggests, man will continually fall victim to control, be it religious or political. That end, when you see that big baby, and he has that big enlightening experience, and he's in the apartment, and he watches himself age, and he has these crazy DMT realizations. You can either see him being reborn as man is different now.
Different.
He's evolved. He's become the Ubermensch. Or you can see it as, here we go again.
Oh, shit. Here we go again.
And that's what I have to say about that.
That's all I have to say about that. So right on, man. You said it all.
Thanks for stopping by. I'm having fun. I hope that made sense.
Was it all right, sir? Did I do well, sir?
And I'll definitely see what's lacking when I edit this later. But if there's any movies you like me to compare or contrast, or movies you'd like me to talk about, go ahead and leave them in the comments. You can go ahead and check out my podcast. I only have the TIFF one out right now, but I will be going forward with that for things that I don't think need to be so visual, or things that include guests. Might have guests on here. It's a little cramped in my little room. I'll see you next time. Bye. I just watched this back and it's just static and me going blah 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 Zarathustra. Don't understand. It's our will to power. Okay.